If you're a chess master, then you probably already know what you're doing with the Caro Kann, but if you're a beginner or intermediate player like me, then there's probably some lines that just don't make any sense to you, and you might need some help on how to open with them. So let's get started with the 5 most annoying Caro Kann lines, according to me. The first line we're going to look at is one that I don't see a lot, but is still a pretty important and I think popular line. And this is the Botvinnik Karl's defense, which happens in the advanced variation. So I always kind of groan when I see the advance, but if you're watching my channel, you probably know this. You've seen up to this point. You know that this is the Caro Kann. Okay, we have our c6 and d5. What your opponent does next is kind of determines what you should do. So I always push. I get this from the Gotham Chess course. This is how I got into chess. I still play the Caro Kann. I'm going to play the Caro Kann until I can no longer win with it. And so far, it still treats me well, so I'm going to keep playing it. I always push when they do the advance to fight for this spot. In most cases, my opponent will push this pawn, protect, and then I'm able to kind of move stuff around. But in this line, they take and they split these 2 pawns. Okay, which is not something I see very often, but I immediately attack. So I'm attacking right there. And I'm also developing my knight so that this can't push anymore. It also protects against check right here. So it's just a really useful move. And it develops a piece off its starting square. So those are all things that I like. Now, my opponent can do several things to try to annoy me with this. They can push here. They can attack here. It kind of depends on the person, but this is the most common line. You go ahead and you pin, and then your opponent is going to do the same thing. So you kind of have like a mirror version of the same line here. Then you create a really cool kind of pawn chain. We got 5 pawns and 2 pawns. It looks pretty cool. They're not all split up. Your opponent has this. So something I'm going to emphasize in a lot of my videos is how the pawns look, because I'm learning pawn structure myself. And what I notice about my opponent's pawns here is we have 3, 3, and then these separated pawns. Okay. I think they're protecting or attacking a lot of places, and they're further advanced. So they're on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. So they're on the 5th rank. So, you know, it can cause problems if you're not paying attention. Okay. In this case, the opponent attacks or protects here, so you can't develop your bishop. Doesn't matter. I always bring my bishop out to this square anyway, but first I'm going to move my knight out, because what I want is to attack and put pressure on this piece, because it's fairly weak. It only has 1 defender right now. Okay. And I want to give it 2 attackers. So I currently have 2 attackers, boop and boop. Okay. Eventually what I want is for my opponent to forget about taking here so that I can take, because my opponent now has an attacker, a defender. So look at that. So I can't really go anywhere yet, but I'm going to put my bishop here. It can't go here, can't go here, obviously. So put in a tight spot. I always say that it's okay to take in the Caro Kann if there's not a knight right here. I generally don't like that, because then they can just place this knight right here and retake, and it doesn't really do you any good. So I'm going to go ahead and take. While the taking's good, they have to move their queen out. And what I really want is for them to forget, like I said. But after castle, they take, I take, and you have I'm looking at my pawns. I like this, okay? It's a really cool pawn structure. You kind of have a backwards pawn right here, which is going to, if you're not careful, is going to require some defense later on. But not worried about this move. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this line is I struggle with pushing pawns, and that's going to be part of the chess journey and YouTube journey over the next year. I never know like when to put a pawn. Like, when do I go up 1 square? When do I go up 2 squares to attack? One thing that I know for certain is that I am comfortable pushing 2 squares here, because I don't have to worry about this pawn becoming a push pawn, because if they don't decide to take, I can take. If they do decide to take, I take back. Whoops. either with my queen or my rook, and then I can put another rook over here, and then I'm looking right here. I can go up a pawn if I sacrifice a rook, okay? So one of the things that I know is that if they go here, I can still take with my pawn, I'm okay, and then this is left out hanging. You can probably hear my cat in the background. And so that is the Botvinnik Karl's defense, and that's how I approach it. You are set up for a good middle game if you do these things. If you're looking at this piece, let me clear it out. If you're looking at this piece and you're attacking this pawn, you're looking pretty good because I don't love their pawn structure. Look at how many different pawns in these different places they have. We look considerably better in this position, I think. Do I still lose in this position? Yeah, occasionally, but I like this setup and I feel comfortable with it because I know what my goals and my aims are. The second line that we're going to cover goes into something a little different. This is the one I probably see the least, but that's one of the reasons to be prepared for it. At least have a response to it. I don't play full games because I personally don't learn anything when I watch an international master or a grandmaster play through an entire game after an opening line. My goal is to show you how to respond to these sort of weird lines because you will play the game in the middle game and beyond. So here we know that if the pawn takes here, it is the exchange variation, and if the pawn moves forward, it is the advance variation. Okay, so we know what to do with those. If they take, we take. Okay, if they advance, we bring out our knight, or we push forward so we can bring out our knight. Okay, but in this line, this is the main line. The opponent brings out the knight. And so I know a couple of things are going to happen. So in this variation, when they bring out the knight and they keep this tension right here, you take, they take, and then you offer a trade of knights. Okay? You want this trade. I know that if my opponent goes right here, that we're dealing with the dreaded alien gambit, which I will cover a little bit later in this video. But this is not that. So what we're going to see now is we are going to see a trade. We take back, doubling our pawns, which is fine in this line. And then our next move is not to pin, but to get our bishop out as quickly as possible so that we can castle kingside. So they bring out, they castle. What you see here is now we have double pawns. We have undeveloped pieces. So we've castled before we developed all of our pieces, which is something you do in this line. Once they castle, we do the pin. This is our relative pin. And if they attack in the Tartic Hour, you do not take back. You retreat. And I think that the reason is because if they push, then they are weakening their position. I think. So they move out. We move our knight. I think that what happens in a lot of these positions is that eventually you bring your knight here and you bring your knight here because in the next move, after getting your queen over, you're going to bring out your rook. So that will be a safe place for you to transpose this knight over here so it protects a lot of this space. And so you're defending against a kingside attack. And that's pretty much all there is to the Tartic Hour. At least all I need to show you. Everything after this gets incredibly theoretical, and I've never seen it go this far, even beyond all of this. It rarely goes to this point, so I think if you have that defense, if you know not to trade off your light squared bishop and to kind of work your knight over to g6, then you're in good shape. This third line is actually the whole reason for this video. This is the impetus for me thinking through this. And it happened in what's called the two knights variation. Now, this happens when the opponent does not go for taking up the center squares. So usually that's what we see with the Caro Kann, but if you don't see that, then what you're looking at is the two knights, usually, at least as far as I know. And I got crushed under this line because of something silly I did earlier. Okay, so in this line, what not to do, I learned through one of my last playthroughs, is to push. That's a really bad idea. It immediately gives your opponent an advantage if they take advantage of it. So don't push. What you do instead is you leave this tension. Okay? You have an advanced pawn here. So don't do their work for them. Okay? pin like normal. If they attack, you take, just like normal. Okay, after they take, you create. This is kind of when I play against d4, this is like a semi-Slav kind of opening, I think. Now you've traded off your light squared bishop, so these are kind of doing your work for you. They're like stuck on those. They kind of create like a bridge that protects all your light squared pieces here. Okay, so we're still keeping this tension. We're not taking and giving them more ammo. So when they push, I always hate this because I feel like, oh, they're getting on my side of the board. Because I don't remember where I saw this, but like if someone puts a piece on your side, you got to get it away from you as quickly as possible. You can't really do that here. But what you do is you move to this square, which with your knight is looking right here, and you can push right here. So you're attacking. Something I learned recently is that a pawn chain is weakest at its base. And so what we're looking at is this pawn right here. It is the base of this two-pawn pawn chain. So we attack there trying to break it up, because then that naturally weakens that square, because what is defending it if this goes away? Nothing. It has no defenders. Okay, so your opponent may defend and reinforce by developing a bishop. What you are going to do is you're going to bring your knight to a natural spot, NC6. And then here, you might think, oh, you know what would be really great is if I took here and traded and did that. But actually, that is a better move. You're attacking the queen. You're attacking the bishop. You have a fork. Okay. And then when they move, it's okay to take it. And then the queen takes, you have a fork. That is the ideal scenario for this opening. And it's kind of like I play the Vienna and on white. It's kind of like if they take the gambit, you have this move, which, I mean, this is just brutal, right? So that is the two knights. This is the best version of the two knights. I've never had it go quite this well, but one day I hope it does. The fourth line is probably the ones that I see the least of all five of them, but it's probably the one that is the most problematic for me. So this is the Caro Kann setup with the pawns in the center, fighting for the center. And this is an exchange. So in an exchange, if they take, you take back. But then what you get is like, it's almost like a queen's gambit. And I just have a thing where if somebody's like, ooh, take my pawn, I just don't. I decline gambits as often as possible because I feel like if someone's offering me a pawn, they have something up their sleeve. And I know I don't play against a lot of Queen's Gambit, but I know that if I take, they're immediately going to be able to develop, whoops, not the king, the bishop. So they've got two pieces in the middle. I've got nothing. Not good. So anyway, in this position, what you do, instead of attack, you defend. So you have two defenders. You have a knight, and you have your queen. They're going to put another attacker there. Okay. You're still not gonna relieve that pressure. You're gonna move your knight out. So we have both of our knights before bishops in this position, and then we should know what's gonna come next. If they bring out a knight, we have our light square bishop. It is going to pin. So we're gonna have our relative pin here. If they take, what do you think you should take with? Do you want to take with your queen? No, because you're losing your queen. You're going to take back with the knight. If they don't take, you don't take back either. I've never seen this line go this far, and I could probably stop here, but I just want to show you theoretically how far it can go in a perfect situation, but you don't take. And I am not 100% sure why that is, but if I had to take a guess, it would be that if you take, they take a pawn with the pawn, and then they have a little pawn chain here. And they have more pawns developed than you do. Like I enjoy the 4-2 that we have here. Look at those pawns. They look nice, but none of them are developed. And then they have this. Okay. They do have a backwards pawn, but I think they would want that. So you wait, okay? And you just keep developing. Bishop to its natural position in the Caro Kann to e7. And then if they take, you don't take in this position. Now, it's like I've been saying throughout this video, I don't have an ironclad rule, but generally what I do in the Caro Kann is if I have this pinned and there is nothing right here, and then this knight that starts here isn't right here, then I will take. But if I see this, or I see a knight right here, I generally don't trade because I feel like it makes their position a lot stronger. Okay, now in this, they take, you take back with the queen, they develop a piece, and then you castle. And then you have a pretty good position. That is what we're looking for. Okay, and that's it for that line. If you get this far, then you're in good shape, I think. Okay, this is the one I'll do the least amount of material on. I don't see this very often anymore. It was really hot for a minute there, but this is the Alien Gambit. So it starts just like the main line. So as you're gonna see, you have this pawn, you take, they take, and then you offer a knight trade. And usually if they wait, like if there's like a moment's pause and they don't take, I think it's gonna be the Alien Gambit. So they don't take, they go right here, you know it's the Alien Gambit. The way that I play it, and I am not a grandmaster, remember I'm a beginner intermediate player. This is how I try to refute the Alien Gambit. What I do is I go ahead and attack. I kind of hold to this general principle that if there is a piece, an enemy piece on your side of the board, you need to try to get it off your side of the board as quickly as possible. And so I attack, take, I allow that to happen. Generally, what I see is this, because they're getting ready to go here to put you in check. So I go ahead and I start the process of attacking. Because what I want to do is I want to fight in all of these squares. Like this is where I'm going to try to fight back because that's not where the opponent wants to fight. What I generally see here is this move, the check. And what not to do is to defend with your bishop here. I've got nothing but bad news when that happens. I move my pawn right here. And so what that does is that blocks it. Even if they put me in check, I move back and they go for my rook, I just let them have my rook. I just ignore it rather than try to chase it down, find something weird to do. Like that's not my bag. So usually what I do is I try to take. Okay, go ahead and force the issue with the queen because you're looking at not just a trade of queens, but you're looking at this bishop that's kind of stuck because it's defended here. There's not many places it can go. Sometimes they'll try to get cute and go somewhere, but I just keep playing. Like I keep developing my pieces and try to get better. Because what they want is for you to fall into a simple trap. And the longer you fight, you may end up losing, but what you will teach your opponent who does the Alien Gambit is that it's not an easy win and it's not something that they can just trick people with. I know that it like a chess streamer came up with it, but I just don't like it. And so, yeah, I try to win every time I play against it. So that's how I open against it. Usually I have a pretty good shot at winning if it looks like this after the first 10 or so moves. If you had any lines in the Caro Kann that you'd like to see explored, what would they be? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do a quick study of opening lines for you. Thanks for watching.